The news is still sinking in, the investigation just warming up. The rescue helicopters toing and froing all day in the French mountain town of Seyne-les-Alpes after the crash of Germanwings flight 9525. It'll be days, say investigators, before we know what, if anything, was said in the cockpit, the voice recorder having been retrieved. More broadly, why the sudden drop in altitude? Why no radio contact with the cockpit during those final 6 to 10 minutes? Earlier, the German Chancellor, the Spanish Prime Minister, touring the crash site in the company of the French President. This, as the ordeal for loved ones is only just beginning in places like Haltern on Zee, Germany, where 16 high school students and 2 of their teachers won't be coming home. We'll cross live there in a moment. We'll hear the tales of those who boarded that Airbus A320, a plane built for short-haul flights like Barcelona-Dusseldorf. The accident puts the spotlight on just how much we use low-cost carriers these days. We'll reflect on how our travel habits have changed and what conclusions, if any, to draw. With us for this special edition, Pierre Duval, in charge of regulation and safety at the Aéro Club de France, the French Aero Club. Thank you for being with us again here. We also want to welcome to our studios, he's a former commercial pilot, aviation legal consultant, Jean-Baptiste Djebari. Thank you for being with us. And from Manchester in the UK, Chris Yates, the founder of Yates Consulting on Aviation. Welcome back to the show, sir. The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter, our hashtag F24Debate. The wait for news, concrete news of why and how, particularly hard to bear for those for the bereaved, and this in Spain, in Germany, and elsewhere.
I feel bad. I haven't been able to sleep or anything, not at all, because it really gets to me. I couldn't believe it. I was on the motorway when I heard it on the radio, and I thought, oh my God, that can't be true. Our son used to work there. Then I had to concentrate and drive, but really it wasn't possible. I just cried.
Everybody knows the people, even though, although we don't speak with them or don't know them personally. Haltern is small, so it goes around, and I have friends they came to me yesterday crying all over it.
As parents, it's a shock that we will never forget. It hasn't happened to you, but you can't help thinking that it could have been you. We shouldn't think that way. But as parents, it's just something that we will not forget.
All right, you heard that student there from Haltern on Zee in North Rhine-Westphalia. Let's cross there and join France 24 correspondent Jessica Saltz. Jessica, tell us where you are exactly.
Haltern am See in North Rhine-Westphalia, a town that is going through a lot of shock and grief at the moment. The school behind me, Joseph Koenig School, found out yesterday that 16 of their pupils and 2 of their teachers were on board that ill-fated Germanwings flight that crashed yesterday on the French Alps. So we've been here since this morning. This is the first full day of mourning, and we've seen a lot of very shocked and devastated faces. This is a town of just 37,000 people. As the mayor said today, most people in the town would have known at least one of the victims, so everyone here affected and incredibly sad. And of course we've seen a lot of young people, a lot of the pupils at the school gathering around the school here today, crying, hugging each other, going into the school. The school actually isn't open as a school at the moment, no classes going on, but it is providing grief counselling for those students who need it, who are devastated at the loss of their classmates.
Jessica, I can see behind you there what looks like candles.
Yes, absolutely. People have been coming all day, constant streams of people laying candles, flowers, cards. There was a memorial service, private memorial service for pupils of the school this morning. There was also a vigil held last night, but of course this is just the beginning of a grieving process that is going to go on for a very long time. There is a commemoration book also inside the school and also inside the town hall here, and the mayor, Bodo Klempel, said today that he was overwhelmed by the sympathy that has come from outside the town, online on the Facebook page, on an online condolences book, people from around the world expressing their sadness at how the tragedy that has befallen this town.
And Jessica, it's not just Haltern on Zee that's in mourning. We saw, for instance, that moment of silence in Cologne, the headquarters for Lufthansa and Germanwings.
Yes, absolutely. It was confirmed again today that 72 people on board were German nationals. It was thought before it was 67, but the number has still has since gone up. So many more German nationals from North Rhine-Westphalia and beyond who are also on that plane. Angela Merkel spoke of her grief today at a brief but very poignant press conference at the crash site, and she also reminded us that it's not only the German nationals that we must be mourning for, but also the victims and the families of all of those on board who were affected.
Well, Jessica, one final question for you. I'm haunted by what you're saying there. A town of 37,000 where almost everyone knows each other.
Yes, absolutely. As I said, the mayor said that everyone would have known probably at least one of the victims, and everyone here we saw today seemed to be deeply affected. Just walking around the town, you saw how sad everyone was, and one of the people, of course, most affected was the head of the school, Ulrich Wassel, who also spoke at this press conference earlier today. He spoke of how devastated he was when he found out the news yesterday, how he wished and hoped that it wasn't his pupils who were on board, and how he found it so difficult to deal with the truth that it was. He said that the school here will just never be the same again. He's used to telling people that there are 328 pupils attending this school, and he says he just doesn't want to have to say that there are 16 fewer.
All right, I want to thank you for that. Jessica Saltz, we're reporting live outside Joseph Koenig High School in Haltern on Zee. Pierre Duval, we were mentioning 24 hours ago how airlines now, unfortunately, are used to handling this type of situation, and I guess it's a statement on just how cosmopolitan the world has become. So many places affected on this continent by what is a short-haul flight.
Yeah, but you know, it's a short-haul flight coming from overflying one country, coming from one country to another. So we have 3 countries involved with all the cultural differences, but also that was very interesting. I don't know if it's the real word today, to hear, to listen to François Hollande and the German Chancellor and Mr. Rajoy, and hearing them just like having the same kind of message, having the same kind of sympathy, and you can see all the efforts which are done everywhere. It looks like something where people are prepared to work together. There's no cultural difference really, and people are really, everybody is involved here. It's impressive, the organization and the way people react.
Jean-Baptiste Djebari, of course, our correspondent in Barcelona, was telling us earlier how, of course, the grief is there as well for the kids at the Spanish school that had welcomed those German students. And again, it's a small world, and this kind of tragedy reminds us of that.
Yeah, well, absolutely. It's a small community. I mean, the aviation is a small community, and obviously, as a passenger, you're part of the 3 billion passengers traveling every year, and well, that makes every travel, every trip special. I mean, we know many people feared of flying, and obviously, whenever such an accident is happening, I mean, it's always a numerous amount of victims and people dying of or being very severely injured, and that comes as a shock every time. I mean, that you never get used to, really.
All right, and in this particular case, investigators quite adamant. They're saying there's not the slightest explanation. Those are the exact words of one of the officials at a press conference here in Paris, saying, yes, they've recovered the voice cockpit recorder. Yes, they can analyze it, but it will take days.
The famous black boxes are in reality red or orange. That allows them to be easily found in the event of a crash. Every commercial airliner has 2. They are located at the rear of the aircraft, which is the most robust part of the plane if a crash occurs. One records the aircraft's technical parameters, the other is the cockpit voice recorder. The black box and its invaluable information is protected by multiple high-resistance layers. The memory card inside can resist a collision at 600 kilometers an hour and temperatures of 1100 degrees Celsius. The cockpit voice recorder keeps a log of radio communications with ground controllers, conversations inside the cockpit, as well as any other noise, such as alarms. In all, the voice recorder keeps the last 2 hours of audio data before an accident. The cockpit voice recorder of Flight 9525 has already been found, and it could hold potentially vital clues.
The black boxes will allow us to know what happened. Were people panicking on board? Did an unknown person get into the cockpit? Were there problems with the controls? The black boxes will tell us that.
When the audio black box is analysed by investigators, they'll hear recordings like this. First, the pilot's communications, then an automatic alarm sounds, then the noise of the plane's motor that suddenly intensifies. Expert analysis of these elements will allow possible problems to be identified. The second black box records the plane's technical parameters, like its direction, the performance of its motors, the airspeed, the altitude and the exterior temperature. This second black box records that data for 25 hours preceding any incident.
Every time the black boxes have been found, it's meant we get a very precise idea about what happened. That's why it's so important to find them.
The black boxes are an essential tool for the investigators. The cause of 90% of aviation crashes are explained when both data recorders are located.
Pierre Duval, journalists were grumbling a bit because they say it's going to be days before we know what's inside those black boxes. And we were sort of hoping we would at least have the answer to the question we were asking 24 hours ago, which is, was there conversation going on in the cockpit? Were they conscious, the pilot and the co-pilot?
It seems that the BEA has most of the answers, but they need time to analyze everything. They know the real good news is that everything is there on the tape, which is not a tape now, it's a memory. But this is a real good news. It's not that important that we have a first indication now instead of tomorrow if the indication we have is the real one. So they have to take time to analyze that, to know exactly who is speaking, who is who, what is happening behind the voices, and when and where things happen. They have to really redistribute the whole thing inside the events.
All right. Jean-Baptiste Gibari.
Well, it's very important to understand that when you retrieve a cockpit voice recorder, first you have to transcript what's inside the actual box, and then you have to identify the voice. And sometimes the quality is not so good. I've done that myself for one of the legal investigations I've worked for. And it took me maybe 30 hours of listening to just identify the actual voices and to then make the analysis.
But do we even know if the pilots were conscious at this point?
Well, absolutely. But you may have trouble to identify if it's the pilot or the co-pilot, and sometimes they speak at the same time. Sometimes the flight attendant will enter the cockpit, and you will have radio communications at the same time and warnings from the aircraft. So that comes as a whole, and sometimes it's very difficult to discriminate.
Chris Yates, we now have confirmation the plane did not blow up in the sky. It was pulverized on impact. What more do we know than 24 hours ago?
Well, very little, quite frankly. We know that the aircraft came down with a fair degree of speed, but that's about it until we get to that information that the data recorder and the voice recorder are holding. And it may be the fact that the information contained on the data recorder is irretrievable completely, because by all accounts there have been reports today of the casing of that particular recorder having been found, but not the contents of that recorder. In other words, the microchip is missing at the minute, and that may well, obviously, complicate the investigation going forward.
All right, but there may still be hope, of course, of finding that second that second black box. Let me ask you, Pierre Duval, what more do you know when you look at everything that the little information we've been given?
What we know, people say when listening to the BEA report press conference today that it sounded like the BEA chief knew more than what he was saying, which is good news, which is they have information, they are processing information, they are making clear that when they deliver information outside, it's real stuff. And that's very important for them and for us. I mean, we are in a situation now that we can really affirm that we are going to know what happened.
Maybe one more thing as well. We need to understand that the BEA is doing the technical investigation. They're not looking for responsibilities. The judicial investigation will be looking for responsibilities and, in time, compensation. So what's very important now, and that's the BEA, is the administrative investigation led by an independent authority, and they need to focus on the technical aspects.
Let's listen to one of those officials who was speaking earlier on. Again, they didn't give up much. They said they had the voice down a recorder. And then as far as the impact itself, they say what we do know is that we'll know more in the days to come.
The debris is scattered across a zone that seems large, but the debris is composed of tiny pieces, and that's not something you see when a plane has exploded in the air. A mid-air explosion would have spread the debris over several kilometers, with large pieces several meters long, and that's not at all what we've seen here.
This morning on Breakfast Radio, the French Interior Minister Chris Yates said that he says that he's not ruling out any possibility, but for now, the main hypothesis, those were his words, are an accident, not an act of foul play. Do you agree, or judging from what you see, that we first have to look at whether or not it's an accident?
Yeah, quite obviously I would agree with that statement, but it has to be said that nothing at this stage can simply be ruled out, and everything can be ruled in. And so there is an investigation that's going on, which
Chris Yates, I'm going to
naturally...
Chris Yates, I'm going to have to interrupt you because we're going to cross now to Germany, and the